Thank you. So I'm going to talk to you about privacy in general terms. I'm going to talk to you about civil liberties in general, both in what's happening in the world and what we're doing in Denmark. And then I'm going to come back and talk about what we're doing in the organization against illegal data retention, or Foreningen imod overlogning, where we filed a lawsuit against the Danish Ministry of Justice that we are keen on winning and changing the world. But let's start at the beginning. I'm Rasmus Malver. If you don't know me, I have a law degree, and a former Minister of Justice has called me obsessed. So I wear that as a badge of honor. And he's very, and I know him from back in the day where he was a reasonable guy. And then he got power, and he just felt the urge to hold the ring and to use it. And that wasn't good for him. So he doesn't like me anymore. The world we live in right now, we're seeing human rights violations across the world. We have the Uyghurs in Asia. I specifically chose not to write China because, well, that's the problem. Is it China? Is it not China? Black Lives Matter in America, which is sort of coming out to the world, which is interesting in and of itself. But also, it ties in with something I'm going to come back to. We have the LGBT rights in what we call Eastern Europe, but that's also a thing here. I'll come back to that. Palestinians in the Middle East, that's an ongoing problem that we have created. You'll see Europe is overrepresented up here. That's not a coincidence. Romani, or Gypsies, as people call them, Sinti, in Europe are having a lot of difficulties at the moment because a lot of the sort of what is called far right, but what is basically racist and nationalist agenda, they like the Gypsies because they're a good scapegoat for everything. And then we have the refugees in Europe, both between European countries, but also coming over the Mediterranean to Europe. Where it's now, 2020, okay for a politician in a parliament to say, yeah, let's shoot them. That's where we are today, and that's a problem. Minorities suffering is business as usual, and that's where we are. A lot of politicians, they like to grasp onto one of the ones in this list and say, yeah, but it's not here. In Denmark, we just had a massive public protest against or in favor of the Black Lives Matter movement in America, and all the racists could say was, but that's not here. 3 of these are in Europe, and apart from the Uyghurs, most of this is European made. It's a question about taking responsibility for what we're doing. That's also why I am a committed man. I am obsessed with this because we can do something about most of these things. All we have to do is do it. Lack of resistance is futile. And that's, you can do something. We have Danes fighting for Black Lives Matter, and that's all right. But what about here? We have had cases of racist police officers, yet nobody's calling, or a lot of people are calling for a review of the police, yet the police themselves are saying, nah, we don't need that. We have a labor minister now. We started out with the illegal data retention organization against a conservative minister of justice, and they are completely on the same page, both in surveillance but also in minorities' rights. It's all right for him to say, nah, the police are okay. Yeah, okay, we have that one case and that other case, and the third case and the fourth case. And we have the 10 cases from last week, but there's no need to investigate the Danish police. This is the explosive, I'm not racist, but. And I feel we should have that more in general life. People saying, okay, it's not that I'm racist, but why are we talking about Black Lives Matter when it's happening across the world? Why are we talking about the Uyghurs when it's in China? What are we going to do? We're going to buy our iPhones from China anyway. And especially the Uyghurs are interesting because they're Muslim. So yeah, there is a point to saying we should do something at home, but the people pointing to this fact usually aren't doing anything at home. So remember the I'm not racist, but, because that's sort of, I feel like this is a good way to sort of leave an argument with these kind of people. LGBT rights in Denmark is something I've fought for myself and where I've had results, and it's something that I've been talking about in the context of surveillance as well, because this is where it starts. In order to violate the rights of a minority, one needs to know where the minority is. This is from, because I've held this talk a few times before, so I'm going to concentrate today on what's happened since we last saw each other. This is from Copenhagen Pride, and it's not my best photo. That's a camera mast with several cameras on it from a police van. This is a place in Copenhagen where the police chose to take the Copenhagen Pride Parade and narrow where it needed to pass through, so people couldn't walk on the other side of a truck. People had to walk after the truck, so everybody were photographed by this. When we began the illegal data retention campaign, I said, yes, but this can be used against minorities, and because I am a member of the LGBT community, I often use that. So I said, by checking our phones, they can see if we go to gay bars. They can see who we're close to, how often we are, what we, well, not what we do, but they can sort of get a general gist of it just from the metadata. And then they just sort of turned it up and said, yeah, okay, let's do that then. You don't need to read this. This is from Rosa Listen, something I was made aware of at the CCC last year, and it's online. And you can, I'm going to tweet it, so go to rasmusmalver.com/ oh no, twitter.com/rasmusmalver. I'm going to tweet a link. Or you can just Google Rosa Listen CCC. So the Weimar Republic, which we often talk about, was the period between the First and the Second World War in Germany. And they saw, okay, fair enough, we've lost this war massively, and we're gonna need some strong leader to take us out of this. We better begin counting the minorities. So this is a list of known LGBT people in Germany at the time. And people were saying, don't worry, we trust our government. Don't worry, it's democratically elected. Don't worry, we have the courts. And then Hitler came, and they already had the list. This is the different ones, the political prisoners, the union workers, the immigrants, this one, the purple one, that's Jehovah's Witnesses. One shouldn't laugh at the Holocaust, but it is still sort of amusing. Next to that one are the LGBT people. And they're all logged as homosexual, but obviously we have trans people in it as well. Anyone who'd ever had any relationship. Then we have more of the sort of political prisoners and prisoners from other armies. So we saw this police car preparing to make this list, which could in the future be used to imprison us. So I got a member of parliament to ask a question, and this is just there, and it's in Danish for you to be able to find it. So this is an absolute reference, you can see that on the stream. This is the reply. The police of Copenhagen have told Parliament that we didn't position any cameras, but we did have a massive truck with cameras on it, spying on them. And oh, by the way, a thing you didn't mention, we had a drone. So police were using drones to register all the participants in the Copenhagen Pride Parade. And this is a good case because even if you aren't an LGBT person, they're a good canary in the coal mine. And we've gotten a lot of rights recently. We can see we condemn Poland for being anti-LGBT, but we're living in a country where we register the people who participate in the march. And the reason this is important is also because the march is to be out there, to see us. And it's for a lot of people the only time of year when they can come away from the tiny village to a place where they're accepted. But now they know the police are taping it and keeping it. Are they going to come there again? That's a problem. So both before, during, and after they're doing this, it's a problem. Another case we have is the drones in themselves are illegal for the police to use. And we talked about this on a radio show I was a part of. Problem is, the law states police cannot film anything that isn't readily accessible from street level. Thus, they cannot use drones. They knew this, they told Parliament this. Then they made a law saying police are allowed to fly in city areas. And for some people, or for everybody who's not a lawyer, that sounds like now they've been allowed to fly the drones and take photos, but they haven't. They're now allowed to fly. This was all in air traffic regulation. The air traffic regulation in Denmark now is if you want to fly in a city, you need to apply for a permit first. But you still can't photograph into people's homes and things you can't see from street level. So the law they needed to change was the one saying the police are never allowed to film anything they can't readily see. But they didn't change that law because they knew that would be an admission of a violation of human rights. So they changed the other one so it seems like it. And that's why we need people like me. People with a law degree who are sort of ready to take some of these cases. Because when they did it, I brought up the LGBT community and said, okay, so you're gonna be able to photograph where we are and who we are in the parade. And 2 years later, they did just that. And they admitted it. This is open information. They said, yes, we did that and we used a drone. There are reasons to be worried. This one is a screenshot of a Danish newspaper. You don't need to know what it says. This is the response when a political party said, why don't we put body cams on all police officers? And the chairman of the police union said, oh, might as well just abolish the police. You don't believe us? We're no use to you at all. And I brought this here because it's interesting, because now we have on one side the police illegally admitting to illegally surveil the public. That's no problem. Yeah, we're stopping pedophiles and all sorts. And on the other hand, our access to that information is not available. I can't go to the police and say, can I see the photos you took of me at Pride? They don't have to. And when we want them to document what they're doing, especially to minorities, they don't want to. And the fact that we're living in this without doing anything about it is why that is why we need the activism. So what can we do? There are two tracks, there's political and the legal. The political is soft power, but it's very easy to sell to people. Like wear a badge. I have a lot of stickers that I make from my own money, which are interesting. So wear the stickers, raise awareness, ask questions of people in power, tweet at the police, share what you see them do, and recruit others to do the same. This works. Yeah, day before yesterday, we went to pick up a fridge in Odense for the CSV village. And on our way, we passed Jensen's Bøfhus, which is perhaps, there's no nice way to describe them. It's a chain of restaurants in the same way that McDonald's is a restaurant, where they do mass-produce, not very well-prepared meals. But outside there was a protest, and I really enjoyed that. There was a protest of young people protesting turbo chickens, and I'd never heard of a turbo chicken. So I had to sort of Google it, and the guy I was driving with had to sort of, yeah, that's because what you do is you feed them these growth hormones, and they can become a fully fledged chicken after only a few months, but they don't have any bones, so you sort of just keep them there. So it's a way of growing the chicken meat artificially. So now I know I don't like that. And that was just young people, and this might have been a project for them because they were standing like outside of Odense, which in itself is a small town, but they're standing on one of the sort of roads quite far from the center of town with banners. That's fucking brilliant. It changed my mind from a position I didn't know I had. But it's probably not gonna ban the use of the chickens. And that's why we have the legal track, which I'm sort of promoting, which is hard power, because what we're doing with the illegal data retention is we're using EU legislation, the European Charter on Fundamental Rights, to defeat the Danish politicians. And that's hard power. We're stopping them at court. And that's quite impressive, but it's also very difficult to tell people with a straight face and without people saying, oh, that's difficult, and I trust the authorities, all of that. So what we do is we educate, we fundraise, and we facilitate. And I mainly took facilitate because I wanted 3 words. But we educate the public, like I'm doing now, hopefully, is telling you people why this is important and how we can do it. We go out there and we raise money, and we facilitate for you guys to be able to do your own protests. One of my, which is not related to the Organization Against Data Retention, stickers is it's like a warning sticker that's semi-transparent, so it's meant to be placed in a car window, and it's a police officer beating someone sitting down in front of them. And I do these stickers whenever Sticker Mule has an offer on. They have an offer every week, and the offer was transparent stickers. And I thought this would be interesting to place in a police car window. And a few days later, video emerged on the social media, and it ended up in Danish media, of police officers in Denmark beating people sitting down, not doing anything illegal. So that was kind of a spot on. But this is what I mean when I say facilitate activism. This is for you guys to take and try and sneak onto a police car. I'm not encouraging you to, well, I don't want to be responsible. I am encouraging you to do it, please do it, but I'm not responsible for you being beaten up by the police afterwards. And that's basically what we're doing. Please ask the questions of us so you can answer them when other people are asking you, because you're going to be ambassadors to this. You're going to go out there and say, we're doing this, we're changing the world. A bit of a shift. The American Civil Liberties Union is the ACLU, and that's what got me into all of this. I knew I liked or I loved the human rights and the fundamental principles of the rights of man. And I knew that in America they have this tradition for having an organization that can enter into and do amicus briefs, as they're called, where in an American court of law, anyone can enter any case. So I can enter on the side of, for instance, the government and say, oh, you need to do this, or I can enter on the side of the victim and saying, for these reasons, we should go this way. In Denmark, this has been prohibited, and they've done all they could to discourage us from taking these suits. I've talked about that earlier, so today I'm just going to focus on the ACLU, because they are the reason that American women can have an abortion. They are part of ending slavery. They are the reason LGBT people have rights. They are fighting for the migrants' rights, which is interesting because America was founded by migrants coming there, taking the place from someone else, and now trying to keep other people out. It's marvelous. But also the right to vote, which in America is not just the females, but also the black people. And as in Denmark, people with any kind of psychiatric disorder. And in America, this brilliant thing, they take the right to vote away from people they deem to be criminals, which is the best way ever to keep your opponents out of the political debate. All you have to do is criminalize what they're doing. And that's what they've done in America with the whole 3 strikes and you're out, but only for certain offenses that most black people commit. That's a different story. The ACLU, I want you to know about them. This is a documentary that just came out about 4 cases in the ACLU that they're currently fighting. And it's a documentary that we don't have the rights to show it here, but I wouldn't mind pointing anyone in the direction of where to get it anyway. And I'm working on, in September, having a screening of it in Copenhagen, and I can really recommend it. This is what I need. This is the American Supreme Court with people protesting while the ACLU is inside arguing. That's the difficult part about doing the legal track in this activism. I need to convince the media to talk about it, and that's fucking difficult. Last year there was an award ceremony for the people who had fought most for the human rights in Denmark. And not that I'm bitter, but 2 of the people nominated are journalists who've only ever written about it whenever I've been pushing them to do it. And for every 10 times I've tried, they write about it once. So I need this. I need you all to go out and protest when we have this, when we have these meetings, when we have these courts, when we have this. It doesn't need to be inside this building. Like when we sued the government, we did file a lawsuit, but we do that online. Instead, we went to the court just with a pretend subpoena, and we filed it pretend because they don't accept physical post. But that was sort of for the media to understand it. This one is LGBT rights, this one is abortion, and this one was the Muslim ban, the Trump one. So they're at the minute in more than 100 lawsuits against the Trump administration and local administrations fighting for these things. Now, I'm going to start up a Danish version of this. And this is going to be interesting because I'm in the process of getting a lot of money to do it. So this is closer to being a thing than it's ever been before. So if you want to join me and help me, you don't have to be lawyers. I need activists, I need creative people, I need people who want to do a bit of the admin, so I'm not the only one holding all of this up. Please do get in touch and get some of the stickers. Illegal data retention, which is why I'm mainly here, is where we are at the minute. We are very close to finishing it, which is nice. I'm going to focus again on what's happened since last we saw each other. The Danish telcos are illegally retaining customers' data, you know that. Now we know that 72% of the Danish parliament is in favor of any surveillance, regardless of whether it works. And that's because I have pushed some of the members of parliament on our side to force parliament to have hearings on this, where all members or all parties have to come and defend their position. And they're quite happy to go up there and say, yeah, we just want surveillance just for the cost of it. And we also have the weird situation where this was because in the Tele2 Watson case, which was where the judgment was handed down in 2016, in the beginning of 2017, the Danish government said, yeah, we're not allowed to keep doing this. They've obviously told us now, but we found this odd case from the Danish High Court saying, oh, but you might be able to uphold the situation for up to 12 months. That was in itself wrong, but that was their only argument, was we have 12 months to fix it. And that was in 2017. I'm unsure if 12 months have passed since, but people tell me they have. Since we were last here 1 year ago, scandals 1 to 4. We had a massive scandal that you're all gonna love, and it's difficult for me to explain it to people who don't do programming or scripting, but what they've done is, all of this illegal data, when they get it in, it might not show what they wanted to show. So they went out to a private company and said, please build us closed source software that's going to transform this data that we don't understand into something that supports our case. Closed source software to help one side in a lawsuit or in a criminal case even. It's mental in and of itself, but because they're not all as clever as the people assembled here today or watching on the live stream, it was allowed. And now the people responsible for this, the technicians sitting there, were like, okay, but it's very important that we get this information out quickly. And the reason that's important is not because it's important cases, it's because the only way to get the data without a court order was to say they needed to do it quickly. So instead of sitting there waiting for the closed source software to finish processing in ways they didn't understand and then send it to the people who need it, they built a script, like a bash script, saying, after 15 minutes, send whatever is done. So there might have been exculpatory evidence that was just rendered after the 15 minutes, but that wasn't sent, so the court never got it. It's true! This is real life, it's like a stand-up show, but it's, how can anyone, I went as a journalist, both to the press conference where the minister sort of disculpated, like he vindicated everyone in his ministry, despite what we now know. They knew about this and didn't do anything about it. They knew about it during the election and chose to keep it a secret. And he said, nobody's done anything wrong. And then I went from there to the police own briefing with the technicians. And they're like, yeah, so there's this magic thing called scripts. And I said, how could you? People! And they're like, no, we don't believe we've done anything wrong because it's very important whenever you have a child molester. Okay, but have you ever had a child molester where you needed the location data? No, but if we had. Yeah, so that wasn't good. And we've had 3 more since then, where it turns out the telcos are not just logging where you are or the metadata, they're also logging the content of your unencrypted texts. And that's interesting because the telco in this case was Telenor, which is around the world, where I used to work and whom I got in touch with after we filed the lawsuit. And we went to a meeting with their leading general counsel, like the I don't know, CTO of law stuff, CLO. And she looked us in the eyes and said, don't worry, we're not logging the content of anything. And now we know they do. And they did. And they knew. So that's sort of difficult to say that without people saying, okay, you seem like a bit of a nutter. But I can document all of this with like written, that this is how is this happening with so little attention. Those were the scandals, and we've used these in court as well to stop it from being delayed more. We've also received the opinion of the Advocate General at the European Union Court of Justice, with the beautiful Court of Justice EU acronym. Now, when you have a case at the European Court, it's usually the courts of the country. In this case, it's a French court and a Belgian court who have sent cases to the European Union's Court of Justice to ask them how should we interpret the law of the European Union in this regard. But as I said before, a lot of people can join filing amicus briefs, and the Danish government did that, and many others have done that. And once they have all that, they hold the hearings, and then you get an opinion from the Advocate General, who is not a part of the court as such. He's not a judge in himself, but he comes up with like an overview, and for these reasons I feel like we should go in this direction, but obviously it's up to the court. And it's brilliant. It's all on our side, and I'm going to come back to it because there's some juicy bits in there. But even then, the Danish police have a spokesperson who is struggling with the truth. So he's already out there saying, oh yeah, when they say that we're not allowed to do that, what they mean is that we've done that slightly wrong, we should do more of it. That kind of argument. And on the basis of this, the Danish court have given us a court date this Monday. So next Monday, there's going to be what's a preparatory court meeting. It's on the phone. And we're going to set a date for the general hearing. And that's very important, and that's very interesting, and it's probably going to be in January. And what comes with this date is also a date of where you end the preparatory work. So it's going to be sometime November, December. From then, the government cannot add any arguments. They cannot change their opinion. They're going to be locked into this, and then in January, we're going to be there, and we're going to beat them. And obviously I need you guys, but we're going to come back to that. This is from the opinion of the Advocate General. He says, we told you this, and we told you this again, so stop asking us the same fucking question. He uses more legalese language, but I'm translating it. He also says, obviously the court should uphold what we've already decided. It would be silly to do anything else. And then he says, so regardless of the fear of crime, you cannot justify surveilling everyone all of the time. And that's the one you come back to when they're saying, oh yes, but what if a terrorist held your wife at gunpoint, and the only way to figure out who they are is to go back and see where they've been. And he's just saying, stop it. There's nothing that's that bad that it can rectify or justify us doing this all of the time. And this is interesting. Yes. Because one of the arguments that the courts have said is, okay, but imagine this. Pedophiles. So we have, in the European Charter of Civil Liberties, children have the right not to be violated. And in order for us to uphold the right not to be violated, we need to surveil all of the people all of the time. And he just says, well, no, stop this. And this is interesting because this isn't very far from what he says. It's just, yes, obviously pedophilia is bad, but two things, you can do things about it without surveilling everyone. And when we have this conflict of rights, like I have the right to freedom of expression, but if I say that all Muslims rape their children, that would be racist, and it would also violate the rights of those people I would say that about. People have a hard time understanding this. But this is a clear-cut violation or conflict of rights. And even though pedophilia is very bad, you cannot say that the right of of children not to be violated can be protected by surveillance and not to a degree where this is proportionate with what you're doing. We could also lock up all men, because it's usually men. And then, well, yeah, and keep the children in, I don't know, like feeding pods. But that would violate other rights, so we shouldn't do that. That's a bad idea. And this is interesting because this is such a silly argument that it's difficult for the Danish government to come up with anything to spin this any other way. And I'm really looking forward to seeing them try. Another argument that they've come up with is, oh yes, we know the court has told us not to do this, but they haven't told us what to do instead. And I've been on television and on the radio trying to say, but that's not the court's problem. You're violating people's rights. It's not up to the courts to tell you how to get away with it. Like I usually say, okay, so there's a bank robber standing before a judge saying, yeah, but how else am I going to earn money? No one's going to say, oh, well, yeah, that is a good question. Really, we need to vacate the premises and not really give him any sentencing because we're not able to tell him how to make money off of his very limited skill set. He has been caught. So I came up with this. It's not up to the court to write new legislation. Montesquieu, who came up with the whole division of powers, is spinning so hard in his grave that the French government, because he's buried in Paris, is considering using the cemetery as a thermal power plant. Because it's really, now we're looking at him spinning at more than the speed of sound. And it's just, how can the legislator and the executive branch of government say, oh yeah, so you're telling us what we're doing is wrong. Well, why don't you try to make the legislation? It's such a useless argument, and this is what they have left. So that's why I'm so optimistic that when we get this opinion of the court, there's nothing really that they can surprise us with, because all of this has been done. Another reason I'm positive is because of the Mark Schrems case against Facebook, where the Advocate General had actually given them some ways out where they could sort of tweak it a bit and say, okay, but Facebook can do these things and maybe the American government is allowed to see these things. And the court said, okay, we've read the opinion of the Advocate General, but no, we're not going to take any of the consensus pieces. European Union citizens' rights and people in the territories are so much higher than whatever you're getting from Facebook surveilling everyone. So I'm looking forward to seeing the opinion from the court in this one, where the Advocate General hasn't given them any ways out. It's going to be brutal. So, coming up, I need a happening when the decision comes, because it's going to be published on the internet. Like, boop, now it's there. I need people in a room with flags and banners shouting, yay! Regardless of what it says. Because that's what journalists want to cover. They need people being happy or sad on camera. And I need you people to help me do that. We're probably going to do it in Copenhagen, but maybe we'll do it with some people. I was about to say zooming in, but obviously Zoom is evil. So joining us on a more respectable platform that isn't Microsoft Teams. Imagine that. Come and join us on Microsoft Teams. That's when you. Okay, so if you ever see a photo of me being sort of held captive in like a cave in Albania or somewhere, that'll be my code word to you guys. That'll be use Microsoft Teams to contact them. Then you know it's me. So the Danish court hearing, that's in January. We're going to need an audience. So we need to fill up the courtroom seats, and we need people standing outside. They're not going to deliver the verdict on the same day, because we don't do that in Denmark, which is probably good, because they need some time to write it down. But it's still going to need people sitting in there for two reasons. One of them for the press, but mostly for the judges. Because that's what I can't prove. I would like to do it, and that is a suggestion I've made to do some research about. But do the rulings more often go in the direction of the citizen when the courtroom is full versus when it's just the citizen and their lawyer there? I don't know. But I like to put a bit of pressure on the judges and say, hey, look, this is something that people are interested in. And then when the decision comes, we need a party. Again, same reason as the others, but also because we deserve it. For the Danish ACLU, I need help. I did write that first, the phrasing "I need help," but that could be read as me trying to seek mental health. But no, to set up a Danish version of the American Civil Liberties Union, I need people to help me with all the administrative stuff, with the political stuff, with the communication stuff, with just all the boring stuff and some of the interesting stuff. And you're very welcome. Was that a question? I do need a better name, and that's a thing. It's not going to be called the Danish ACLU. In the movie The Fight, when they're standing outside, they're shouting, "ACLU, we are here, we stand with you." And I want our name to be something that can be worked into a chant. That's my spec for what I need help with. Is finding a name for this organization that can be chanted. Ongoing violations, and the reason we need the broader thing. The drones I've already talked about. This is an area where they've admitted to Parliament what we're doing is illegal, but snooping at borders, this is an area where during the corona, so we weren't allowing people in unless they had a reasonable reason to get into the country, and one of those could be, again with EU legislation and civil liberties, that you had a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever type of partner in the country. And the police said, okay, fair enough, we'll need to check your emails and text messages to see if you're actually in a relationship. And I said, excuse me, you can't do that. That is a violation of human rights, because it would always be something that is protected by human rights, even in the Danish constitution, which doesn't have many, that this is a private conversation they want access to. And in order to get that, they need legislation that is clear and that is there at the time and that is reasonable. So again, we're talking about the conflict of rights, and it needs to be balanced. And they had none of those things. So I got Parliament to ask a question, and the police said, yeah, we did instruct the police to do it. We wrote these cards, because apparently that's how they communicate with their officers. They write these action cards, they're called. Sounds like magic with gathering. And the police can pull them out and say, okay, I need to snoop in this. And yeah, that's illegal. We did those. That was illegal. Sorry about that. They didn't even say sorry about that. They just said, yeah, we did something illegal. We've stopped that now. That's it. How can that be? How is no one being put how is no one being held responsible for doing it? They've said what we did. We had a computer. We wrote a text. It was illegal. They did the thing we wrote that was illegal, and it was illegal. Oh yeah, fair enough. You're just mischief. Photographing, that's general both at the Pride Parade but also at other protests. And then it's something I've fought with myself. I live in Nørrebro, which is a part of Copenhagen, where the police are ever present because it's sort of politically an interesting area. And the police are